Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
St Ignatius was born in 1491 in the castle of the Lords of Loyola, the last of 13 children. His family was in contact with the royalty of Spain and possessed a sizable income. He was baptized Inigo. Ignatius is a name that he took later in life at Rome, but it will be convenient to call him Ignatius from the beginning of our story. His mother died when he was a child, and his father died when he was about 16. But before the death of his father, or before his father died, he managed to place him as a page in the court of the king's treasurer, so that he could learn the matters of a courtier and prepare for a career as a gentleman in the king's service. Unfortunately, in the court he also learned the vices of the idle rich. In 1516, King Ferdinand died. Ignatius's patron lost favor, so he had to find another position. He entered the service of the Viceroy of Navarre in the following year. In 1521, the French invaded, and on May 20th, Ignatius was among the defenders in the siege of Pamplona. They were hopelessly outnumbered, but he refused to abandon the city's fortress and held out against the French until a cannonball passed between his legs, shattering his right shin and wounding his left calf. He was carried back to Loyola, where he spent almost a year convalescing in the castle. To pass the time, he asked for something to read. He wanted some novels that would talk about chivalry, about knights and ladies. That was the sort of thing he liked to think about. But they had no such books in the castle. All they could offer him was the life of Christ and a book of the lives of the saints. So he read those. As he read, he began to admire the deeds of the saints and ask himself, what if I did what St. Francis did? What if I did what St. Dominic did? After all, they were men like me. Why can't I do what they did? During those months, he also had a vision of Mary and Jesus, which made it possible for him to turn away from his past sins of the flesh and never again surrender to temptations of that sort. By the time he was well, he had undergone a thorough conversion. He went to Montserrat, made a general confession, and left his sword at the altar of the Blessed Virgin. He would no longer need it, now that the Lord he was serving was Christ. Then he went to nearby Manresa, where he spent the better part of a year in intense prayer and penance. His spiritual exercises are in large part the fruit of what he learned there. Then he departed for Jerusalem, where he wanted to live as the saints had lived. However, he stayed there less than a month because the Franciscan provincial, who had authority over pilgrims, ordered him to leave. The sources don't explain why, but perhaps his great fervor could have caused trouble with the Turks. In any case, since he couldn't stay in Jerusalem as he'd planned, he thought that he would teach others how to follow Christ. But in order to do that, he would need to study theology, and so he would have to learn Latin. So in 1522, when he was over 30 years of age, he began studying Latin. His classmates were children, and they were not kind to him. This man, full-grown man who has to study with children. After learning Latin and studying his philosophy and other preparatory matters in Spain, in 1528 he went to Paris to complete his studies. There he gathered around him a group of like-minded men, including St. Francis Xavier and St. Peter Faber. On August 15, 1534, in a chapel of Montmartre, the small band of 7 took a vow to go to Jerusalem within a year after finishing their studies, if this were possible, and to work for the conversion of the Turks. The following year, St. Ignatius finished his studies as a Master of Arts, and they began making their way to the Holy Land. At Venice, they waited for a boat, but the impending war with the Ottoman Turks made it impossible to depart. So they went to Rome, where in November 1538 they were able to offer their services to Pope Paul III. The first mission he gave them was to catechize children in Rome. St. Ignatius celebrated his first Mass on Christmas night that year. He'd actually been ordained a year and a half before, but he refrained from celebrating Mass, both because he wanted to prepare well and because he wanted to celebrate his first Mass at Bethlehem. But with the war, that was impossible, so he did the next best thing. He celebrated in the Basilica of St. Mary Major in front of the relics of the crib. The Pope wanted them to become a religious institute, but their idea of the life they were called to didn't exactly match a traditional order. So they settled on a new form of religious life with simple vows instead of solemn ones, and praying the breviary individually instead of singing the office in choir. They called themselves the Company of Jesus. Their plan received Paul III's approval on September 27, 1540, and in April of the following year they elected St Ignatius General and pronounced their vows on April 22nd. As General of the new order, St Ignatius remained in Rome, wrote its constitutions, and supervised the order's growth, not only in Italy, but in other countries of Europe as well. He sent missionaries to India, and also missionaries, or at the very least preachers, to Germany to oppose the Protestant Revolution that was spreading. In the 15 years that he governed, the congregation grew to over 1,000 men, serving as teachers, preachers, and missionaries. He died in Rome on July 31st, 1556, and was canonized on March 12th of 1622. Grace builds on nature, and St. Ignatius's military training gave him an interest in studying spiritual warfare. He analyzed the devil's tactics and described them in his spiritual exercises. One place where he does this is his famous meditation on the two standards, the standard of Christ and the standard of the devil. Which will you choose? Another is in the rules for discernment, which he places in an appendix. This is the first rule. In the persons who go from mortal sin to mortal sin, the enemy is commonly used to propose them apparent pleasures, making them imagine sensual delights and pleasures in order to hold them more and grow in their vices and sins. In these persons, the good spirit uses the opposite method, pricking their conscience and through the process of reason. So the devil is trying to make them comfortable with sin, trying to make them think of pleasant thoughts of sin, or these thoughts that seem pleasant, while God is giving them uncomfortable thoughts. And so in this case, one must dwell on the uncomfortable thoughts. Conversely, in the persons who are going on intensely cleansing their souls and rising from good to better in the service of God our Lord, the method is contrary to that in the first rule. For then it is the way of the evil spirit to bite, sadden, and put obstacles, disquieting with false reasons that one may not go on. And it is proper to the good spirit to give courage and strength, consolation, tears, inspirations, and quiet, easing and putting away all obstacles, so that one may go on in well-doing. So in this case, one should ignore what disquiets and dwell on what gives strength to persevere. In the 13th rule, he explains how the devil is like a man who is seducing a woman. As a licentious man who, speaking for an evil purpose, solicits a daughter of a good father or a wife of a good husband, wants his words and persuasions to be secret, and the contrary displeases him much. When the daughter reveals to her father or the wife to her husband his licentious words and depraved intentions, because he easily gathers he will not be able to succeed with the undertaking begun. In the same way, when the enemy of human nature brings his wiles and persuasions to the just soul, he wants and desires that they be received and kept in secret. But when one reveals them to his good confessor or another spiritual person, who knows his deceits and evil deeds, it is very grievous to him, because he gathers from his manifest deceits being discovered that he will not be able to succeed with his wickedness begun. So with these and other teachings, and certainly there are many others, St. Ignatius reveals the devil's tactics so that we can more easily defeat him. Praise be Jesus and Mary. Amen.
you'd like to grow in love and knowledge of the Immaculate Virgin Mary, consider a subscription to the Missio Immaculate magazine. The Missio is a bi-monthly magazine published by the Franciscans of the Immaculate for over 15 years. Every issue of the Missio features articles about Our Lady's privileges and her mission in the Church and world for the sanctification and conversion of souls. The Missio takes to heart the ancient saying of the Church, De Maria Nunquam Satis, of Mary you can never say enough. You can subscribe online at missiomagazine.com, that's MISSIO, magazine.com, or go to the homepage of airmaria.com. Back issues of the Missio are also available upon request. The Missio is a practical way to behold your mother and take her into your home. Ave Maria.